So in this example, we are going to be combining trigonometric ratios. We're going to be adding and subtracting them. And we're going to be using our calculator, but we shouldn't use our calculator exclusively. We're also going to use the unit circle, because often when we use our calculator, sometimes we're not quite sure if the result that we get on our calculator is correct. So we're going to use our unit circle to help confirm our results. So you should always use the two in tandem. Always draw a unit circle to give you a visual idea of what's occurring. So for letter A, we have the sine of 30 degrees plus the cosine of 30 degrees. So I'm just going to put in 30 degrees here. And of course, that's going to make a special right triangle, a 30, 60, 90 special right triangle. The pattern for our special right triangle here, this is going to be 1/2. And this is going to be the square root of 3 over 2. The sine, recall that the sine is relative to the y-coordinate. That's our vertical length here. So the sine of 30 degrees is 1/2. And of course the cosine, that's relative to our horizontal axes. So that's going to be this length here, our x-coordinate. So that's the square root of 3 over 2. So we have the sine of 30 degrees, that's 1/2, plus the cosine of 30 degrees, that's root 3 over 2. So we'll just add these two together. So this winds up being 1 plus the square root of 3 all over 2. So if we go over to our calculator, that's exactly how we're going to type it in. I'm going to type in, make sure that you are in degree mode. We're dealing with degrees. That's 30 degrees. So we have to make sure we are in degree mode. So I'm going to type in sine 30 degrees. Make sure you close off that parenthesis. Plus the cosine of 30 degrees. And we hit enter, and look at that. Square root of 3 plus 1 over 2. The only difference is that, our terms have flip-flop, but that's exactly what we have. Now, if you don't have a TI-30 or a calculator, a scientific calculator, it'll give you an exact result. We can still check this result. This is an exact result by plugging it in your calculator, and you should come up with a decimal equivalent of 1.366 if we round it to 4 decimals. So we still can check. So A is 1 plus the square root of 3 all over 2. So we'll move on to B. So B is the sine of 45 degrees plus the cosine of 45 degrees, similar to A. Here's our 45 degrees here. And again, this is going to make our special right triangle, our 45, 45, 90 special right triangle. The pattern for a 45, 45, 90, this is the square root of 2 over 2. And this is the square root of 2 over 2. Again, sine is relative to the y-coordinate, to the vertical axis. So that's this right here. So the sine of 45 degrees, that's the square root of 2 over 2. And we're going to add that to the cosine, which of course is our horizontal axis here, our x-coordinate. That's also the square root of 2 over 2. Square root of 2 over 2 plus the square root of 2 over 2. That's 2. Square root of 2 over 2. And of course, common factors will cancel. So this is the square root of 2. Go to our calculator. We'll go ahead and we'll type in the sine. Make sure you're in degree mode. We're using degrees. Sine of 45 degrees plus the cosine of 45 degrees. Hit enter, and we have the square root of 2. The decimal equivalent would be 1.4142 in 4 decimals. So B, the answer to B is the square root of 2. So we'll move on to C. So the cosine of 60 degrees minus the sine of 30 degrees. 60 degrees. Here's our 30, 60, 90. Cosine of 60 degrees, we are only concerned with this measure here, the horizontal measure. That's 1/2. So the cosine of 60 degrees is 1/2. Now the sine of 30 degrees is over here. It's still 30, 60, 90. But it looks like it's moved. Sine, that's this one here. That's our vertical, our y coordinate. That's 1/2. So the cosine of 60 degrees is 1/2, and the sine of 30 degrees is also 1/2, and we're subtracting the two. 1/2 minus 1/2, that's 0. So we'll go over to our calculator and we'll check it. Cosine of 60 degrees minus the sine of 30 degrees. Hit enter and we have 0. So if you did this strictly using your calculator, you might not know why it comes up to be 0. We do it visually using our unit circle, and it tends to clarify things. So C is 0. We'll move on to D. That's 2 times the cosine of 225 degrees plus 3 times the cosine of 180 degrees. 225 degrees, that's way down here. That's going to form a 45, 45, 90 right triangle. Cosine, we're concerned with the x-coordinate, that's this right here. That's the square root of 2 over 2. However, we're going back. So it's going to be negative root 2 over 2. The quadrant in which the special right triangle lies matters. And of course, the cosine of 225 degrees is negative root 2 over 2, but that's 2 times that. So we have negative root 2 over 2 times 2. These are going to cancel. So it winds up being negative root 2. So 2 times the cosine of 225 degrees is negative the square root of 2. We're going to add that to 3 times the cosine of 180 degrees. Cosine of 180 degrees, that's right here. And of course, that's this here. That's negative 1. Don't forget we're going back. This is a unit circle. It has a radius of 1. We are going back. That's negative 1. But then 3 times the cosine of 180 degrees, and the cosine of 180 degrees is negative 1. So 3 times negative 1, that's negative 3. So you have negative root 2 minus 3. Again, we'll use our calculator to check, and you can type it in just like this. 2 times the cosine of 225 degrees, don't forget to close off your parentheses, plus 3 times the cosine of 180. Close off our parenthesis, and we have negative square root of 2 minus 3. So we confirmed our results. So this is negative root 2 minus 3. We'll move on to E. The sine of 90 degrees. Here's 90 degrees right here. The sine, of course, that's the vertical, right? So that's 1. 5 times that. So this winds up being 5. So 5 times the sine of 90 degrees is 5. 120 degrees. That's over here. That makes a 30, 60, 90 special right triangle. Cosine. That's the horizontal. And we are going back. So for our 30, 60, 90 here, this is going to be negative 1/2. But we're going to do 2 times that. 2 times the cosine of negative 120 degrees. I'm sorry, cosine of 120 degrees. So the cosine of 120 degrees is negative 1/2 times 2. It's negative 1. The sine of 330 degrees. That's about right here. Another 30, 60, 90 special right triangle. Sine is the vertical. It's going down. The pattern for our 30, 60, 90, that's going to be negative 1/2. We'll multiply that by 4. That's negative 2. 5 minus 1 minus 2. That's 2. Now we can check it. And we will type it in just as we see it here. So we'll do 5 times the sine of 90 plus 2 times the cosine of 120 degrees plus 4 times the sine of 330 degrees. And there's 2. So it confirms what we worked on. So that's 2. Let's finish up with F. Now keep in mind that these are now in radian measure, but the approach will be the same. Pi over 3 that's 60 degrees. Another 60 degrees, that's 120 degrees. That's 2 pi over 3. Another 60 degrees, that's 3 pi over 3, or in other words, pi. And another 60 degrees, we end up down here. That's 4 pi over 3. This is 240 degrees down here. But this makes a 30, 60, 90 special right triangle. We're talking about cosine, so I want this measure right here. That's going to be negative 1/2. So the cosine of 4 pi over 3 is negative 1/2. But I multiply that by 2. So 2 times negative 1/2, that's negative 1. Let's clear some of this out of here. Pi over 6, that's 30 degrees. 2 pi over 6, or in other words, pi over 3, that's 60 degrees. 3 pi over 6, that's pi over 2. It's 90 degrees. 4 pi over 6, or in other words, 2 pi over 3, it's 120 degrees. 5 pi over 6, that's 150 degrees. But what it does is it makes our special right triangle. Here it is. This is the one. It makes a 30, 60, 90. Sine, that's this here. The sine of 5 pi over 6, that's 1/2. 4 times the sine of 5 pi over 6, that's going to be 4 times 1/2. That's 2. We add the 2 together, -1 plus 2, that's equal to 1. So we're going to check it, but this time we have to make sure that we are in radian mode, since we're using radians. Go back to our mode. I'm going to switch it to radian. And I'm now in radian mode. But I can type it in all just like this. So we'll give it a go. 2 times the cosine of 4, don't forget your pi key, over 3, close off your parenthesis, plus 4 times the sine of 5 pi over 6. And we're going to close off our parenthesis. Hit enter. And we confirmed it. So the solution to F is 1. And there you go.